Hello everyone, we are from Group 3. We are going to present the effects of changes in foreign exchange rates in IAS 21. Before we start our presentation, let us introduce ourselves. My name is Nyoman.
My name is Alexander Yang with NIM 2025-0064.
My name is Hernando.
Transmitter with student number of 2023-50076.
Event.
Okay, the objective. As global business becomes increasingly interconnected, many companies now operate across borders. These international activities can create complexities when preparing financial statements. A company might engage in transactions that are denominated in foreign currencies, or it might operate branch or subsidiaries in different countries with different local currencies. In some cases, a company may even choose to present its entire financial statements in a currency that is different from the one it normally uses for its day-to-day operations. IES 21 was created to address these complexities. It provides clear guidelines on how to account for foreign currency transaction and how to translate the financial statements of foreign operations. More specifically, the standards help us answer two critical questions. First, which exchange rate should be used when translating foreign currency transactions into the functional currency? 2. How should the change in exchange rate, which can affect the value of assets, liabilities, revenues, and expense, be reflected in the financial statements? Ultimately, the goal of these standards is to ensure that the financial statements accurately reflect the financial effects of change in foreign exchange rates. This allows investors, regulators, and other stakeholders to make more informed decisions based on financial reports that are both consistent and comparable across borders. Okay, the next is scope. Now that we understand the objective of IES 21, let's move on to its scope, or in other words, when and where the standards should be applied. IES 21 applies in three main areas. First, it applies to the recording of individual foreign currency transactions and the remeasurement of foreign currency balances. This includes, for example, when a company purchases goods or service from a foreign supplier and needs to pay in another currency. However, this excludes some specific financial instruments that fall under the separate standards known as IFRS 9. Second, it applies to the translation of the financial results and financial position of foreign operations, such as subsidiaries, branches, or associates, into the currency used by the parent company. This is especially relevant for multinational corporations that operate in several countries and need to consolidate financial information into a single unified report. Third, the standard applies when a company chooses to present its financial statement in a currency other than its functional currency. This is referred to as the presentation currency, and it can be any currency selected by the entity, often one that is more convenient or relevant to international investors. By providing a consistent framework for all of these scenarios, IES 21 ensures that foreign currency effects are treated in a uniform way, reducing the risk of misinterpretation or manipulation in global financial reporting. Okay, let's now take a closer look at the core approach that IES 21 requires. The standards applies regardless of the type of structure of the company, whether it is a standalone business with limit foreign exposure, a parent company, with multiple foreign subsidiaries or simply a branch located in another country. Under IES 21, every entity must first identify its functional currency. This is defined as the currency of the primary economic environment in which the entity operates. Typically, the one that influence the entity's revenues and expense the most. Once this currency is determined, our transactions in foreign currencies must be translated into the functional currency using specific exchange rates, depending on when the transaction occur and whether it involves monetary or non-monetary items. Now, if the entity is part of a large corporate group, its financial results and financial position must then be translated into the group's presentation currency. This step is necessary to allow the group to produce consolidated financial statements. The presentation currency can be any currency that the group choose. For example, US dollars or euros, even if it differs from the functional currencies of individual subsidiaries. It's also important to note that even standalone entities, those not part of a large group, may choose to present their financial statements is in a currency different from their functional currency. When they do, they must follow the same translation rules to ensure transparency and comparability. In summary, IAS 21 provides a systematic method for handling foreign exchange effects. It ensures that the financial performance and position of entities are not distorted by currency fluctuations, and that international investors can fairly assess a company's financial health regardless of where it operates.
Okay, so the terms that we will find in this IAS are, the first one is the closing, right? Which is the things, right, at the end of the reporting period. Second one is the exchange difference. It is the difference resulting from the translating given number of units of the currency into another currency at different exchange rate. Next is the exchange rate itself, is the ratio of exchange for two currencies. Next one is the fair value. Fair value is the price that would be received to sell an asset or paid to transfer a liability in an orderly transaction between market participants at the measurement. Next one is the foreign currency. As we know, the other country's currency other than our currency or other than local currency. Next is the foreign operation. So it's like a entity subsidiary, associate, etc. The activities of which are based or conducted in a country or currency other than those of the reporting entity. So when you have branch in other countries, so it's considered as foreign operation. Next one is the functional currency. The currency of the primary economic environment in which the entities operate. So if the entity operates in USA, so the functional currency. Next group is parent and all its subsidiaries. Next one is monetary items, the units of currencies held, an asset, liabilities to be received or paid in a fixed and determinable number of units. Next is net investment in a foreign operation. Is the amount of the reporting entity's interest in net assets of that operation. Of course, it's also in the foreign countries. Next one is the presentation currency. Presentation currency is what currency you use in your financial statement. If you use rupiah, that is your presentation. And the last is spot exchange rate. Is the exchange rate for immediate delivery. Okay, next. Next is the factors considered by entity in determining its functional currency. what need they look into when determining the functional currency? First, the currency, not only like the general currency. The currency in which first that mainly influences sales price for goods and services. Let's say 90% of our companies is exporting to the USA. So the functional currency is USD because we have to look at the interest rate regulation by the government in. And next one, currency of the country whose competitive forces and regulations mainly determine the sales price of goods. So the country's regulation policies that can help us to make decisions regarding our operation. Let's say we are exporting USA, although our branch is in Vietnam. So the USA, the USD is one second factor. And the next one is currency that mainly influences the paper, material, and other. It's regarding the cost. Let's say we are company in Indonesia, but we have all the production factory, the paper material in China. So the functional currency in here is yuan, not IDR, because that influences the paper material is in China, not in Indonesia. Next one is factors that also provide evidence of an entity functional currency. First, the currency in which funds from financing activities are generated. Let's say our company issued bonds, but it's not local bonds, it's international bonds with USD, which is we know USD is mainly in USA. The functional currency because of the international bonds is USD. Second one, the currency in which receipts from operating activities are usually retained. So let's say we keep if our cash from the foreign activities from our brand. Let's say in Malaysia, we retain it in ringgit. We are not directly send it back to our home office in Indonesia. So the functional currency is ringgit. Next one is other factors to determine the functional currency of a foreign operation. So there are four in here. First is operational autonomy. What is operational autonomy? So depends in the foreign countries, they can manage themselves, do all the themselves to their local parties in there. They are not really doing everything of that home office. So operational. Next one is transaction proportion. It's when mostly all of the brand's activities related to the foreign countries where they do their operations. Let's say Japan, 90% of their operation is selling things, selling goods to people in Japan, not only just receive and sell goods from the home office. Third one is the cash flow impact. If they can manage their cash flow, they don't really ask for cash flow from home office. They can manage, retain, save their cash flow from their operation. So that's also considered the functional currency. Last one is the self-financing. If the brands foreign country can finance themselves without asking home office to give them cash to their operation, so it also is consideration to determine the functional currency. Okay, The considerations for functional currency. So if the indicators are mixed, so as I've explained before, management must use judgment to determine currency that best reflect the underlying economics. So they have also at the current economic situation and decide which one is the best. Like they will never use the weaker currency. They 100% will use the strongest currency. Once determined, functional currency should not be changed unless there is significant shift in economic or situation. So they will not necessarily change the currency because it's really complicated unless the economic situation really asks them to change their currency. If operating in a hyperinflationary financial statements must be restricted under International Accounting Standard 29, which I will not explain in here. The next one is net investment in a foreign operation. Okay, so a monetary item, or let's say long-term receivable loans, or a foreign operation consideration out of net investment in settlement is neither planned. So when you give receivables or maybe you give loans to your brands, your foreign brands, but there is no settlement, no need to pay in the short term. A monetary item. The item may come from any subsidiary within the group. You lend something and you don't have any plan to ask them to pay it in the terms that you have set, or maybe in determined date. So it's considered as monetary item, not as net investment, because when you lend something and you don't have any expected that of to get back from that, which is also your part of operation. Monetary items. What is monetary items? Monetary items in here involve a right to receive or an obligation to deliver fixed or determinable amount of currency. Let's say pension employees, receivables, loans, but non-monetary items they don't have the right to receive an obligation to deliver. Let's say prepaid expenses, to intangible asset, right to use asset, etc. Okay, so the next part will be explained by my friend.
Okay, so here I'm going to explain about the reporting foreign currency transactions in the functional currency. The first is about the initial recognition. So there's some point that should be highlighted, which is the first is a foreign currency transaction. It's a transaction that is denominated or requires settlement in foreign currency. So this foreign currency transaction is included into the transaction arising when an entity is about to buy or sell goods or services whose price is denominated in foreign currency, and to borrows or lends funds when the amounts payable or receivables are denominated in a foreign currency, and otherwise acquires or disposes of assets or incurs or settles liabilities, and also it's denominated in foreign currency. Okay, next is the second point is the foreign currency transaction that is shall be recorded on initial recognition in the functional currency by applying to the foreign currency amount the spot exchange rate between the functional currency and the foreign currency at the date of the transaction. And the last point of initial recognition is the date of transaction is the date on which the transaction first qualifies for recognition in accordance with IFRS. So for practical reasons, the rate that approximates the actual rate at the date of the transaction is often used. Like example, an average rate for a week or a month might be used for all transactions in ex foreign currency occurring during that period. And if the exchange rate is fluctuate, the use of the average rate for the period is inappropriate. Okay. And next is about the reporting at the end of subsequent reporting periods. So at the end of each reporting period, foreign currency monetary items shall be translated using the closing rate, and the non-monetary items that are measured in terms of historical cost in a foreign currency, it shall be translated using the exchange rate at the date of the transaction. And the same non-monetary items, but if that is measured as the fair value in a foreign currency, it shall be translated using the exchange rates at the date when the fair value was measured. Translated using the closing rate, and the monetary items that is classified as terms of historical cost is classified using the exchange rate, and the non-monetary items that classified as measured at the fair value is translated using the exchange rate. So next is about the carrying amount of an item is determined in conjunction with other relevant standards. So for a practical, for an example, like property, plant, and equipment, it may be measured in terms of fair value or historical cost in accordance with IAS 16, which is talking about property, plant, and equipment. But whether the carrying amount is determined on the basis of historical cost or on the basis of the fair value, and if the amount is determined in a foreign currency, it's all translated into the functional currency in accordance with the standard. And next, the carrying amount of some items is determined by comparing two or more amounts. So, for example, like the carrying amount of inventories is the lower of cost and net realizable value in accordance with IAS 2, which is talking about inventories. So it's similar in accordance with the IAS 36, which is the impairment of assets, and the carrying amount of an asset for which there is an indication of impairment is the lower of its carrying amount before considering possible impairment losses and its recoverable amount. And for asset that is non-monetary and is measured in a foreign currency, the carrying amount is determined by comparing. The first is the cost of carrying amount as appropriate, translated at the exchange rate at the date when the amount was determined. And second is the net realizable value or the recoverable amount, which is as appropriate. It's translated at the exchange rate at the date when the value was determined. And the last point is when several exchange rates are available, the rate used is that at which the future cash flows represented by the transaction or balance could have been settled if those cash flows had occurred at the mentioned date. Okay, so there's now we're talking about the recognition of exchange difference. So exchange difference arising on the settlement of monetary items or on translating monetary items at rates different from those at which they were translated on initial recognition during the period or in previous financial statements. That is shall be recognized in profit or loss in the period in which they arise. And here is when monetary arise from a foreign currency transaction and there's a change in the exchange rate between the transaction date and the date of settlement, an exchange difference results. So when the transaction is settled within the same accounting period as that in which it occurred, all the exchange difference is recognized and it's recognized in that period. And when the transaction is settled in a subsequent accounting period, the exchange difference recognized in each period up to the date of settlement is determined by the change in exchange rates during each period. And when again, okay, next is talking about the gain or loss on a non-monetary item. So it is recognized in the other comprehensive income, and any exchange component of that gain or loss shall be recognized in other comprehensive income. And the other IFRS requires some gains and losses to be recognized in other comprehensive income. And for example, like IAS 16, it requires some gains and losses arising on the revaluation of property, plant, and equipment, and it's to be recognized in the other comprehensive income. Okay, last is about the exchange differences arising on a monetary item, which is that forms from a part of a reporting entity's net investment in a foreign operation, and it shall be recognized in profit or loss, which in the separate financial statement of the reporting entity and its individually financial statements of the foreign operation as appropriate. Okay. So when the monetary items forms part of a reporting entity's net investment in a foreign operation and it is denominated in the functional currency of the reporting entity, an exchange difference arises in the foreign operations individual financial statements. So if such an item is denominated in a currency other than the functional currency of either the reporting entity or the foreign operation, an exchange differences arise in the reporting entities separate financial statements and in the foreign operation. They make the individual financial statements. And next is when an entity keeps its books and records in the currency other than its functional currency at the time the entity prepares its financial statements, all amounts are translated into the functional currency. So this produces the same amounts in the functional currency as would have occurred had the items been recorded, and it's initially become the functional currency. So for example, like monetary items are translated into the functional currency using the closing rate. And non-monetary items that are measured on a historical cost basis are translated using the exchange rate at the date of the transaction that resulted in the recognition. Okay, this is for the change in functional currency. So when there's a change in an entity's functional currency, the entity shall apply the transaction procedures applicable to the new functional currency prospectively from the date of the change. And when the functional currency of an entity reflects the underlying transactions, events, and conditions that are relevant to the entity, that should be considered that once the functional currency is determined, it can be changed only if there is a change to those underlying transactions, events, and conditions. For example, like a change in the currency that mainly influence the sales price of goods may lead to a change in an entity's functional currency. And next is the effect of a change in functional currency is accounted for prospectively. In other words, that is an entity translates all items into the new functional currency using the exchange rate at the date of the change. And the resulting is a translate amount for non-monetary items that is treated as their historical cost. So exchange differences arising from the transaction of a foreign operation previously recognized in other comprehensive income. Okay, for the rest of the explanation about IAS 21 will be explained by my friends. Thank you.
Translation to the presentation currency. Under IAS 21, for entities in non-hyperinflationary economies, assets and liabilities are translated at the closing exchange rate at the reporting date. Income and expense are translated at the rate on the transaction date or an average rate if exchange rates are stable. Any resulting exchange differences are recorded in other comprehensive income, not in profit or loss. Because translation exchange differences under IAS 21 reflect changes in exchange rate that do not arise from the entity's operating or financing activities, they are treated as unrealized gains or losses. Recording them directly in profit or loss would introduce volatility into earning that does not stem from core business performance. For hyperinflationary economies, where inflation is extreme, typically exceeding 100% over 3 years, as seen in countries like Venezuela or Zimbabwe, financial statement must be restated for inflation in accordance with IAS 29. After restatement, all amounts including comparatives are translated using the closing rate at the most recent balance sheet date. The restated figures become the new historical cost base once hyperinflations end. Translation to the presentation currency. In consolidation process under IAS 21, special rules apply when dealing with foreign operations. One key aspect is the treatment of intragroup monetary items such as loans between a parent and subsidiary in different currencies. These items cannot be fully eliminated in consolidation if they are denominated in different currencies because they create real exposure to exchange rate fluctuations. As a result, the related exchange differences must be recognized, typically in profit or loss, or in certain cases, in other comprehensive income. When a foreign operation prepares its financial statement on a different reporting date from the parent entity, IAS 21 allows a maximum gap up to 3 months. However, the reporting entity must make adjustment for any significant transactions or events that occur in the gap between the two dates. This ensures that the consolidated financial statement reflect accurate and up-to-date financial information. Finally, when a foreign operation is acquired, any goodwill and fair value adjustment arising on acquisition are considered part of the foreign operations assets and liabilities. Therefore, they are expressed in the foreign operations functional currency and translated using the closing rate at each reporting date. This ensures consistency with the treatment of other assets and liabilities of the foreign entity within the consolidated financial statements. Disposal or partial disposal of a foreign operation. In the case of a full disposal, where an entity shall or fully derecognize in the interest in a foreign operation, or cumulative exchange differences that were previously recognized in other comprehensive income or OCI must now be reclassified from equity to profit or loss. This reclassification happens at the same time the gain or loss disposal is recognized. This ensures that the full foreign exchange impact is reflected in the results of the period in which the disposal occurs. For partial disposal that are counted as if they were full disposals, such as when an entity loses control of a foreign subsidiary, even if it retains a non-controlling interest, the same rules apply. All related exchange difference are classified to profit or loss because the entity no longer considers that operation. IAS 21 requires the entity to reclassify only the proportionate shares of cumulative exchange differences. This means only the portion relating to other ownership or interest that was sold is recognized in profit or loss, while the remainder stay in equity. It's important to note that write-down, whether due losses or impairments, do not qualify as disposal under IAS 21. As such, even though the carrying amount of the investment is reduced, the related exchange differences are not reclassified to profit or loss. The last one is disposal may take various forms, not just outright sales. They can also occur through liquidation, repayment of capital, or abandonment of all part of foreign operation. In each case, the applicable rules for reclassification of exchange differences depend on the nature and extent of the disposal.
So next, I will explain the tax effect of exchange differences. So first, let's talk about what exchange differences are. So this usually arises from two things, which is the first one is foreign currency transaction, such as buying or selling in a different currency, and the second is the translation of financial statement from foreign operation into the reporting currency. Now, where do these differences go in the financial statements? So some are recognized in profit or loss. For example, when we settle a transaction in a foreign currency and the exchange rate has changed, and the other especially used from translating a foreign subsidiary financials is go to the other comprehensive income or OG. And so how do tax come into play? So under IAS 2012, this exchange difference may create temporary difference between the accounting and the tax value of asset or liabilities. This means the company might need to recognize deferred tax asset or liability, depending on whether the difference is taxable or deductible. Next, we discuss about the disclosure requirement IAS 21. So, according to IAS 21, company must clearly disclose the amount of exchange differences that were recognized in profit or loss. But for the note, this excludes any gain or loss from financial instruments measured at fair value through profit or loss under IFRS 9. Next, if there are exchange difference recorded in other comprehensive income, the company must show the net amount and provide a reconciliation. In other words, explain how the balance changed from the beginning to the end of the period. There is also an important rule if the presentation currency is different from the functional currency. In that case, the company must explain why it choose a different presentation currency and what the functional currency actually is. If there is a change in functional currency, either for the reporting entity or a significant foreign operation, the company must disclose the change along with a clear reason. And finally, if a company shows additional financial information in a different currency without following the IFRS translation method, it must label this clearly as supplementary information. And along with that, they have to disclose the currency used in that display, the actually functional currency, and the translation method used to convert the number. And the last is the effective date and transition. So the standard become mandatory for annual period beginning on or after 1st January 2005, although earlier application was encouraged as long as the entity disclosed it had done so. So several important amendments followed. In 2005, the amendment on net investment in a foreign operation introduced paragraph 15A and changed to paragraph 33, applicable from 1st January 2006. In 2007, the reverse IAS 1 brought terminology updates and affects several IAS 21 paragraph, effective from 1st January 2009. Then, in 2008, IAS 27 was amended, adding paragraph 48A to 48D. This change were applied prospectively from 1st July 2009. Further modification came with the issuance of IFRS 10, 11, 13, and 16. Each one amending specific part of IAS 21 and should be applied when the corresponding standards are adopted. IFRS 9, released in 2014, also introduced important amendments, including the deletion of some paragraph in IAS 21. Again, these changes apply when IFRS 9 is adopted. Now, for the transition provision, paragraph 47 should be applied prospectively only to acquisition after the date of first application of the standard. However, retrospective application is also permitted if the entity chooses to do so. For foreign acquisition that occur before applying the standard, entity do not need to list that prior period. Instead, any goodwill and fair value adjustment from those acquisition can be treated as asset and liabilities of the reporting entity itself, not of the foreign operation. And lastly, all other changes should follow the transition rule on IAS 8, which deal with accounting policies, change in estimate, and correction of error.